From seemingly low-rent genre films which delivered a damn fun time, to almost hilariously robust entries to long-in-the-tooth franchises, and everything in between. These movies all turned out so much better than anyone expected. This is Whatculture, and here are movies nobody expected to be good. Number 10, Plane. Look, it's a movie called Plane starring Gerard, Butler, and the bloke from Luke Cage, aka Mike Coulter, with the trailer giving off distinct "this should have been a streaming film" vibes. How good could it possibly be? Yet, as much as Plane was a meme long before it came out, the end product is precisely the sort of modest meat and potato genre film we desperately need more of these days. Indeed, nobody's gonna see a movie called Plane for a nuanced meditation on the human condition. But this gamey action thriller benefits considerably from the entertaining two-hander between Butler and Coulter, its snappy pace and slew of tense, well-staged set pieces. If dad thrillers tend to be a point of mockery for both critics and audiences, Plane proved that when the ingredients are all there, a fun high-concept, well-matched leads and loony action, they can be unpretentiously joyous. That it ended up receiving better reviews than many of the year's most anticipated blockbusters is absolutely shocking in the best way.
The Beekeeper. The marketing for The Beekeeper made it look like the most quintessential dumped-in-January release imaginable. A John Wick knockoff from the wildly uneven David Ayer, with a script from the guy behind such cinematic classics as Ultraviolet, the remakes of Total Recall and Point Break, and Expendables. This had dud written all over it then, only for it to land a shockingly sturdy 71% on the tomato meter, and better still, end up grossing over $150 million at the box office. Ultimately, Ayer had the good sense not to take the assignment too seriously, fashioning The Beekeeper as a brutal but often darkly hilarious action thriller, which was fine-tuned to the strengths of leading man Jason Statham. It is a card-carrying dad movie in the best sense, wrapping a basic plot around intense action sequences while also bringing an unexpected amount of personality to the table. The Beekeeper has proven successful enough that a sequel is already in development.
Saw X. Considering that the number of good movies with the letter X in the title can basically be counted on one hand, it was reasonable to have basement-level expectations for the 10th Saw movie. 10 of them! Plus, accepting that the series' last remotely decent entry was 2009's Saw 6, and the two previous Saw movies marked woefully desperate attempts to jolt the franchise back to life, it would have been outright naive to expect much from a prequel set between the first two Saws. Yet props to director Kevin Groider, who tellingly also helmed Saw 6, for finally giving fans another worthy entry, one with an unexpectedly well-developed dramatic core, in turn providing Tobin Bell with a ripe opportunity to flex his mighty acting chops. The traps certainly aren't among the series' most imaginative, but Groider lets loose with the gnarly gore fans expect, while focusing on telling a solid story rather than tying himself in knots in the pursuit of a jaw-dropping plot twist. That the 10th Saw movie ended up being the best reviewed to date, the only one to receive a fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes even, is an outcome nobody could have ever seen coming.
The first Omen. It was tough not to groan when a prequel to legendary horror film The Omen was first announced. Because did anyone outside of the studio actually ask for that? The Omen is a fantastic self-contained story that really didn't beg for elaboration. Couple this with the film being filmmaker Akasha Stevenson's feature debut, and it was tough to muster even a shred of enthusiasm for this glorified exercise in cynical brand reinforcement. But oh, how wrong we all were. Girded by Stevenson's tense, unsettling direction and an astounding central performance from the great Nell Tiger Free, this is a rarest of horror prequels that truly justifies its existence. It's clear in every frame of this film that all involved cared about making something memorable and impactful rather than a mere bucket of genre mulch to feed the unrelenting content algorithm.
Gran Turismo. Though Hollywood has certainly been showing video games greater respect in recent years, the likelihood of anyone producing a worthwhile adaptation of the Gran Turismo franchise was still meager at best. Then, when the film was announced to be based on the true story of a teenage Gran Turismo player who became a pro racer for real, and the directing reins were given to Neil Blomkamp of all folk, it was tough to expect anything above mere mediocrity. But fair play to Blomkamp. The man took the assignment seriously and in turn delivered a surprisingly engaging, visually breathtaking sports flick elevated by the efforts of a strong cast. Archie Madekwe makes for a supremely likeable lead, though the show is categorically stolen by David Arbor, whose impressively committed performance as the GT Academy's head trainer Jack Salter keeps the pick chugging along through even its more predictable phases. You certainly know where the story's going, yet for as goofy as the premise of a gamer becoming a real-life racer sounds on paper, Blomkamp and his cast managed to keep it tethered firmly to the ground.
Beverly Hills Cop Axel F. Would it have surprised even a single solitary soul if the fourth Beverly Hills Cop movie was a pure dud? The red flags speak for themselves, from the full 30 years that have passed since the previous film to the generally ropey track record of belated comedy sequels, Eddie Murphy's diminished star power, and the fact that it was directed by a first-time filmmaker, Mark Malloy. But of all the legacy sequel comedies to release in recent years, Beverly Hills Cop Axel F is actually right at the top of the pile. While certainly not up to the level of the first two entries in the series, it benefits enormously from Murphy's firecracker performance and the returning presence of original cast members Judge Reinhold and John Ashton, the latter of whom sadly then passed away a few months following the film's Netflix premiere. In the very least, it understands what made the franchise popular in the first place, and boasts enough charm and energy to feel like all involved weren't just here for the paycheck.
Megan. The marketing for Blumhouse's horror film Megan didn't make it crystal clear precisely how in on the joke the filmmakers were, and so it seemed like the best this could hope for was being a campy, sub-child's play stab into the killer doll subgenre. Yet within mere moments of the movie starting, it's howlingly clear that Megan understands precisely what it is, and is keenly committed to delivering a riotous romp to that end. Even accepting its regrettably sanitized PG-13 content rating, this is at once a deliciously deranged satire of modern tech conveniences and soulless corporate culture, and a shamelessly silly movie about a murderously protective AI-powered doll. It's also extremely well made, with a canny combination of practical puppetry and shrewdly implemented VFX, bringing Megan to impressive life considering the mere $12 million budget, while Alison Williams and Violet McGraw additionally give legitimately compelling dramatic performances. It would have shocked no one if Megan was a critically panned box office smash, but it managed to have its cake and eat it too, raking in over $180 million worldwide amid enthusiastic reviews from the press and audiences alike.
The 4:30 movie. Even Kevin Smith's biggest fans will struggle to deny that the Clerks filmmaker's later stage career has been a massively mixed bag at best. From the boldness of horror comedy Tusk to the execrable Yoga Hosers and the so-so victory lap sequels Jay and Silent Bob Reboot and Clerks 3. So it wasn't easy to be particularly enthused about the 4:30 movie, a coming-of-age comedy loosely based on Smith's own formative years, because the man apparently hasn't mined enough of his own life for his cinematic backlog. But credit where it's due, the 4:30 movie isn't great by any means, but it is a shockingly solid piece of work. Ditching the filmmaker's signature vulgarity for a more sweet-natured drama that basically feels like a low-budget riff on Steven Spielberg's The Fabelmans, this is the sort of movie it really didn't seem like Smith had in him at this point in his career. If nothing else, it suggests that Smith would do well to deviate from his bread-and-butter Askew-universe movies a little more often, and just focus on telling simple human stories.
BlackBerry. Look, we all love Glenn Howerton and Jay Baruchel, but when it was announced that the pair were starring in a dramatization of BlackBerry's rise and fall, and it wasn't a parody of the spate of corporate biopics released in recent years, many were understandably bemused. This was a film nobody asked for and had all the makings of one that ultimately nobody would be interested in. And yet against considerable odds, filmmaker Matt Johnson made the story of the BlackBerry phone a compulsively engaging one. Johnson has a few aces up his sleeve here. First, there's the movie's slippery tone, pinballing between sly comedy and genuine drama, but never quite going overboard in either respect. Then there's the gorgeous roving docu-style camera work, and best of all, a genuinely awards-worthy performance from Howerton as BlackBerry's eccentric early investor Jim Balsillie. That BlackBerry ended up one of the best reviewed films of the entire year is something not a single solitary soul could have predicted.
Roadhouse. Pretty much everything pointed to Amazon's Roadhouse remake being an unmitigated train wreck. From the fact that it was an unasked for retooling of an extremely iconic movie, to the deeply iffy casting of Conor McGregor in the villain role, and the behind-the-scenes drama suggesting yet another chaotic Doug Liman production. Now, Does Roadhouse 2024 erase or surpass the 1989 Patrick Swayze starring original? Absolutely not, but it does mostly work as a glossy, action-packed reimagining. This is in large part due to a solid central performance from Jake Gyllenhaal, combined with energetic action sequences and a general vibe that confirms nobody involved is taking this nonsense too seriously. While many remakes of cheeseball classics ill-advisedly play things too straight, looking at you, Point Break, Roadhouse at least embraces its inherent ridiculousness and has no pretensions to being anything but a gleefully dumb action flick. It proved enough of a streaming hit for Amazon at least that a sequel was fast-tracked into development.
Thanksgiving. It's fair to say that most fans of Eli Roth's 2007 fake trailer for Thanksgiving, released as part of Quentin Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez's Grindhouse double bill project, had long given up hope of the planned full feature ever getting made. Let alone actually turning out well, Roth ended up quietly shooting the film before it was marketed on a muted wave of anticipation, and TriStar Pictures ultimately decided to hold reviews until just 2 days before release. No good signs here. And on top of all this, Roth is a maddeningly inconsistent filmmaker, with as many duds to his name as hits. But Thanksgiving was ultimately almost exactly the movie it needed to be. A giddily self-aware slice of well-made schlock, which turned in precisely the brutal gore, black comedy, and sensational satire that original trailer promised 16 damn years ago. It would have surprised nobody if Roth's latest was a pure Thanksgiving turkey, but he evidently understood the assignment and delivered accordingly.
Land of Bad. Land of Bad certainly didn't do itself any favors from the outset with a title like that. But if you can forgive its name and marketing, which painted it as just another generic exercise in military fetishism, complete with a slumming Russell Crowe earning an easy payday, this is actually a pretty solid film. With gritty, suspenseful action, slick direction from William Eubank, and sturdy performances from the ensemble cast, including a surprisingly spirited effort from Crowe, Land of Bad makes the most of its familiar setup, delivering above-average action thrills for a film that looked painfully uninspired on paper. There's something to be said for modest genre films which operate within a conventional framework but deliver the goods in terms of character and especially action, and Land of Bad absolutely fits that bill. For a film that most surely expected to be dismissed by reviewers, to end up critically fresh is quite the triumph indeed.
Elemental. Elemental is a film that arrived on a wave of negative hype pre-release, with its utterly lackluster trailers suggesting a strangely generic by-the-numbers animated romp from Pixar. And while it certainly doesn't rank among their very finest work, this is far from the Cars 2 level disaster many were expecting. Elemental is a gorgeously animated, totally rock-solid middle-tier offering from the studio. In a year where so much of Disney's output has fallen disappointingly flat, Elemental was actually one of their few wins, bolstered by its affecting, family-focused narrative and outstanding ensemble voice cast. The fact that nobody expected it to be any good is perhaps best reflected, however, in its shockingly leggy box office performance. After opening below projections in its first weekend on release, positive word of mouth, including an A cinema score, led it to gross almost $500 million worldwide. Though not one of Pixar's biggest hits or even best movies, that's quite the turnaround for a film many had written off as a catastrophic bomb after its opening weekend.
Immaculate. The moment that Sydney Sweeney was announced to be starring in a horror film where she plays a timid novitiate, it was tough to take the whole setup seriously. Sweeney cast such a confident presence on screen in almost all her roles that this felt like a case of fatal miscasting. Combine this with the film being helmed by Michael Moen, who previously directed Sweeney in the critically dismissed erotic thriller The Voyeurs, and it was tough to have much hope for this one. But Immaculate proved the doubters wrong. Sweeney turned out to be a fine fit for the central role, aided by Moen's atmospheric filmmaking, leading up to a mesmerizing final scene that's simply unforgettable. In a great year for horror, it may not sit among the genre's hallowed masterworks, but for a film that many laughed off the moment it was revealed, it turned out impressively well.
Guy Ritchie's The Covenant. The low expectations for Guy Ritchie's The Covenant weren't so much a result of questioning Ritchie's talent, but him seemingly being totally unsuited for a serious-minded war film. Given that the director's actor's career is largely defined by blokey crime comedies, there was a perception that he'd struggle to rein his cheeky instincts in and land the sort of tone needed for this movie to work. But what a pleasant surprise it was that The Covenant is ultimately so unlike anything Ritchie has produced before, enough that one can scarcely believe he actually made it, without even a hint of snark. The Covenant is an earnest, dead serious war film with a genuinely jolting emotional core, boasting sharp visuals and two excellent performances from Jake Gyllenhaal and Dar Salim. Few believed Ritchie capable of such comparatively restrained, sober filmmaking, which combined with MGM's weak marketing campaign for the movie, suggested they most likely had a dud on their hands. Though The Covenant flopped at the box office, in large part due to that pathetic aforementioned marketing, one suspects it's gonna have a long tail on streaming.
Hot Frosty. In recent times, Netflix has made an industrious attempt to capture a slice of the lucrative holiday movie market previously monopolized by the likes of Hallmark and Lifetime. Such seasonal fare largely consists of low-effort cornball slop, made to appeal to only the most undemanding of audiences, hopped up on turkey and eggnog. And so why would Netflix's absurd-looking Hot Frosty be any different? The film, about a lonely woman who falls in love with a snowman, which is magically transformed into a very hot guy, has all the hallmarks of another hilariously bad holiday romp tailor-made for the lowest common denominator. So many were shocked when Hot Frosty released two predominantly positive reviews from critics, with many praising not only the chemistry between its leads, but also the script's unexpectedly self-aware tone. Sure, it's a shamelessly silly piece of work, but seems more acutely aware of its place in the cinematic ecosystem and leans into the ridiculousness, rather than taking itself as blandly seriously as the vast majority of these rush-to-market Christmas flicks do. As a result, it's a surprisingly charming offering.
No Hard Feelings. The marketing for No Hard Feelings painted it as a rather quaint throwback to 90s comedies, basically the sort that don't get made today, for better or worse, and certainly never get theatrically released. For many, this seemed less like a crackling comeback for Jennifer Lawrence after stepping back from the limelight for a few years, and more an easy, low-stress paycheck role following years of high-profile, high-concept genre films and awards-baiting prestige fare. But you know what? No Hard Feelings was a damn riot, and that's in large part due to Lawrence's boldly go-for-broke performance. Even ignoring her instantly legendary nude fight scene in the film, Lawrence hurls herself headlong into the role of a financially destitute 30-something woman who accepts a job romancing a socially awkward 19-year-old. Beyond being gut-bustingly funny, Lawrence's performance also finds pathos through her chemistry with co-star Andrew Barth Feldman, ensuring this is a film as boldly raunchy and edgy as it is surprisingly heartfelt.
Ricky Stanicky. The marketing for Ricky Stanicky did it no favours at all, making it look like an abrasively tasteless comedy, the likes of which aren't made anymore, and some would argue for very good reason. Plus, despite starring Zac Efron and John Cena, the film's direct-to-streaming release and minimal marketing campaign suggested it'd be another nothing burger comedy that's near instantly forgotten upon release. Nobody's going to call Ricky Stanicky a smart movie, but it is a surprisingly funny one, in large part due to John Cena's hilariously overcommitted performance in the central role, playing a budding actor who agrees to pose as the imaginary friend invented by a group of friends. And to his credit, director Peter Farrelly absolutely recaptures the anarchic spirit of the relentlessly tacky R-rated comedies of the early 2000s, making this a bewilderingly effective comedy vehicle, even if it absolutely won't be for all tastes. In terms of hitting its intended targets though, Ricky Stanicky was an unqualified success.
Peter Pan and Wendy. Was anyone really asking for yet another live-action Peter Pan movie? In the last 20 years alone, we've had 4 major Peter Pan adaptations / reimaginings / spin-offs, none of which succeeded both critically and commercially. So why go there again? Furthermore, with Disney sending Peter Pan and Wendy direct to Disney+, it seemed to indicate the Mouse House didn't have too much faith in it either, much like the terrible recent Tom Hanks starring Pinocchio adaptation. Yet under the singular guidance of filmmaker David Lowery, this turned out to be a surprisingly soulful and evocative retelling, which dared to make some intriguing and refreshing, if controversial, changes to the source material. If so many of Disney's live-action remakes have looked like plastic sludge, it's such a damn relief to watch one that actually looks like an artist deliberated over every aspect of its visual conception. Not to ignore Jude Law's wonderfully over-the-top performance as Captain Hook too. While certainly not the best of all the Disney remakes, it is one of the few which feels like it actually exists due to artistic inspiration rather than mere corporate obligation. How refreshing.